So, if I had this system of equations, I could solve it by the addition method, I could solve it by the substitution method, I could solve it by graphing, but I can also solve it by Cramer's rule. Cramer's rule sets up 3 different determinants that we're going to solve to help us find the value of x and y. So, the first determinant, D, is the coefficients of your system of equations. So we have a 7 and a 7, and then we have a -6 and a 4. We're then going to find the value of that determinant by subtracting its cross products. So 7 times 4 is 28, minus -6 times 7 is a -42. And so when I subtract my negative, I end up adding 28 plus 42, which gives me a value of 70. Now, as weird as this looks, notice on the bottom of these, there's a D on the bottom. So when you find x, you're going to use a determinant called D sub x, and you're going to put it over D. So right away, I'm going to do this to remind me that when I put my answers in, they're going to be over 70 unless I can happen to reduce my fraction. Now, I'm going to find the determinant, and this determinant up here is called D sub x. What they're doing is replacing the x's, that's the first column, with these n numbers. So an 8 and a 7 will go in your x column. This column will stay the same as it originally was, which was the 7 and the 4 in the original one. So again, I'm going to find the value of that determinant by subtracting the cross products. 8 times 4 is 32, minus 7 times 7 is 49. And so I'm going to take 32 minus 49, which looks like it is 17. So x is going to equal -17/70ths. See, it didn't come out to a nice whole number like we like, and that's why Cramer's rule kind of works out nice, because when you get weird answers, it's easier to do. Our next determinant is going to be what they call D sub y. Whoops, why am I writing a B? D sub y. D sub y says in the y column, put these 2 n numbers. So this time the 8 and the 7 is going to go in the y column. The x's are going to stay the same as they originally were, the 7 and the -6. And so if I do my cross products, I'm going to have 49 minus, and this is going to be -48. So that means I have to take 49 plus 48, so that gives me 97. So y equals 97/70ths. I want to check my answer. To check my answer, I'm going to put these in one of my 2 equations. So I would do, if I use my top equation, 7 times -17/70ths plus 7 times 97/70ths to see if indeed I get an answer of 8. I'm going to grab my calculator for that. So 7 times -17/70ths plus 7 times 97/70ths. And if I hit equals, sure enough, I get an answer of 8. It checks out. Now I could also check it in my second equation if I wanted to be really sure, but that's how I would check my answers. So you will enter this in, you will enter this in, you will enter in all those little boxes in between, and put all that stuff in to show that you know how to do Cramer's rule. So, number 14. I want to use Cramer's rule to solve my system of equation. First determinant, determinant D. I'm going to use my coefficients. So I've got a 5 and a 3 for my coefficients in the first equation, 5 and -2 for my coefficients of my second equation. So, subtracting my cross products, I'm going to have -10 minus 15, so I'm going to have -25 for the value of D. So I know that I'm going to have a negative 25 on the bottom of these fractions. Then I'm going to find my other determinant, my determinant dx. I'm going to put these in for the x's. So negative 3 and 1 will go in that first column. The y should stay the same as original, so 3, negative 2. So negative 3 times negative 2 is 6, minus 1 times 3 is 3, 6 minus 3 is 3, so x is going to equal negative 3/25. Doing dy. d sub y, I'm going to replace the y's with those two n numbers. So that second column is going to be the negative 3 and the 1. The first column is going to stay the same. The x's were both 5s. 5 and 5. So my cross product, I got 5 minus negative 15. That means I'm going to do 5 plus 15, which is 20. Y is going to equal negative, and I can reduce this down, 20/25 would be 4/5 then. Just for fun, I'm going to check that in the second equation. So 5 times negative 3/25 minus 2 times negative 4/5. And I'm going to grab my calculator. So 5 times negative 3/25 minus 2 times negative 4/5. And I get an answer of 1, which is what I'm supposed to get. So it checked out and looks like it should be okay. And one last one using Kramer's rule. And then that will be the end of the pie chart and everything that you should know, at least in this college algebra class. And so, first of all, filling out my determinant D. Keep in mind, those are 1s in front of the x's if there's not a number there. Hopefully you know that by now. So we have 1, 4, and 1, negative 2. Cross multiplying, we're going to get negative 2 minus 4, which means negative 6 is going to be the value of our determinant D. Here, when we do D sub x, we're going to replace the x's, so we're going to have a negative 9 and a negative 6 in there. Our y's are going to stay 4 and negative 2. So negative 9 times negative 2 is a positive 18, minus negative 6 times 4 is a negative 24. We're going to end up adding 18 plus 24. Looks like that's going to be 42. So I'm going to have 42 over negative 6, which, hey, simplifies into negative 7. Our y1, we're going to replace the y column with the negative 9 and the negative 6 from the end. Our x's are going to stay the same, so those are going to both be 1s. So we're going to have negative 6 minus a negative 9. Negative 6 plus 9 would be 3. So I have 3 over negative 6, so y is going to be negative 1/2. So checking that in my first equation, if I take negative 7 plus 4 times negative 1/2, 4 times negative 1/2 is negative 2. Negative 7 plus negative 2, sure enough, is negative 9. Checks out. So when they have you do Kramer's rule, you will be filling in all of those, but you will also be filling in all the little boxes of the work of what numbers you put in your determinants, so they can check and see and make sure you're using the right values when you're solving your matrices or solving your determinants. All right. That is the end of homework day 40.